Today, we're going to talk about something that's literally all around you, but it's almost completely invisible. I'm talking about global shipping. It's the lifeblood of our entire economy. It's the engine that moves everything from the phone in your hand to the food on your plate. And right now, that engine is being completely retuned.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. The path that your coffee or that tiny microchip took to get to you, it's not the same path it took just a couple of years ago. The entire map is being redrawn by some really powerful new forces.
So, what we're going to do is navigate 5 of these powerful strategic currents that are reshaping global trade as we speak. We're going to see how new rules in the US, new rivalries brewing in Asia, and even brand new icy passages opening up in the Arctic are all, believe it or not, connected.
All right, let's kick off our global tour. Our first stop is going to show us how a single decision made in a quiet hearing room in Washington, D.C., can actually send massive waves across ports all over the planet.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start in the United States, where some new regulatory pressure is really shaking things up at the biggest ports. Then we'll jet over to Asia to watch this 3-part power play unfold, which involves the UAE's incredible tech investments and the competing strategies of China and India. We'll wrap things up way up in the high north with Canada's new Arctic corridor. Okay, first up, the United States. We often think that technology or bigger ships are the main drivers of change in this industry. But right now, one of the biggest shifts is actually coming from the regulators. The Federal Maritime Commission, that's the FMC, has launched these huge investigations into 3 of the country's most critical ports, LA, Long Beach, and New York. And what are they looking at? It all comes down to carrier billing practices, and specifically these things called detention and demurrage fees. So what on earth are these fees? Well, basically, they're late fees. It's like a library book. If a company doesn't pick up or return a shipping container within a certain free time window, the carrier hits them with a charge. The big complaint was that these fees were being slapped on unfairly, especially when the ports were totally gridlocked. So what's the real takeaway here? Well, in the short term, it's a major shakeup for the carriers. They're being forced to completely overhaul their billing systems. But the long-term goal? Oh, it's much bigger. It's about forcing a whole new level of transparency into the historically murky world of shipping contracts. Okay, now let's shift our focus and head east. Over here, the currents of change are being driven less by regulations and more by massive investments and some serious geopolitical chess moves. Our first stop is the UAE, which is making an absolutely enormous bet on technology. Let's just start with this number, $4.8 billion. That's how much Abu Dhabi Ports is pumping into its Khalifa port expansion. And look, this isn't just about making the port bigger. It's about making it way, way smarter and greener. And it's how they're spending that money that's so important. Khalifa Port is rolling out AI to manage its operations, they're using hybrid electric vehicles to move containers around, and they're setting up cleaner shipping corridors. The UAE is basically positioning itself to be the high-tech, sustainable logistics hub for the whole region. But, technological ambition is only one part of the story in Asia. The other is a growing strategic rivalry, and we're seeing it play out most intensely between China and India. This quote really says it all. China has been flexing its muscles, increasing its naval presence, deploying new surveillance ships, and even drone swarms in the South China Sea. Now, trade is still flowing, for sure, but these actions are jacking up insurance premiums and forcing shipping lines to calculate a whole new kind of risk. And in response, or maybe just in parallel, India is playing a very different kind of game. It's not trying to match China ship for ship on naval patrols. Nope. Instead, it's focusing on the ships themselves. Let's just break down these competing strategies side by side. On one hand, you've got China focusing on naval maneuvers and drone patrols, moves that definitely increase geopolitical risk. But on the other hand, India's playing the long game. They're pouring resources into a massive shipbuilding boom, locking in record contracts for new tankers and LNG-ready vessels. See, this isn't just about building ships. It's about building influence. It's about positioning India as a vital, credible alternative to Chinese shipyards. All right, from the warm, contested waters of the South China Sea, our final current takes us to the freezing top of the world. Up here, melting ice is doing something that was pretty much unimaginable a generation ago. It's turning a frozen barrier into a potential new highway for global trade. And Canada is moving fast to shape this new reality with its Northern Shield initiative. This is way more than just a line on a map. It's a formally designated shipping corridor through its own northern waters. And it's designed to do two really important things: help with the export of natural resources and allow for better patrols by the Canadian Coast Guard. But this new passage is a real double-edged sword. The opportunity is huge. I mean, it could potentially shave weeks off trade routes and unlock incredible resources. The challenge, though, is just as massive. It requires ships and crews with highly specialized ice navigation skills, and it demands constant environmental monitoring to protect a very fragile ecosystem.
So, we've toured the globe, right? From the ports of LA to the shipyards of India and all the way up to the icy waters of the Arctic. What do all these different currents tell us when we finally put them all together?
Okay, let's connect all these signals into the big picture. First, in the US, regulation is forcing a brand new era of transparency in shipping contracts. Second, over in Asia, we're seeing this huge push for energy efficiency from places like the UAE and China, while India is busy carving out its own dominance in shipbuilding. And finally, way up north, Canada is cautiously opening an entirely new maritime frontier. So here's the crucial point. These are not isolated events. They are all just symptoms of three massive underlying forces: regulation, technology, and geopolitics, all colliding and interacting with each other to completely redraw the map of global shipping. And that really brings us to the ultimate lesson here. In a market that's this volatile and this complex, just reacting to change is way too late. The real key to navigating these new waters is having early intelligence. It's about seeing what's coming before it even arrives. Which leaves us all with one final critical question. In a world where the oceans are becoming more crowded, more contested, and more complex than ever before, the greatest challenge isn't just moving stuff from one port to another. The real challenge is this: how do you see what's just over the horizon?